Broadcasting from Salisbury University campus, this is WSDL Ocean City, NPR News Talk 90.7, putting Delmarva first. Stay tuned for Delmarva Today with your host, Don Rush.
Most of us don't think about who will take care of us when we get old. Welcome to Delmarva Today. This is Don Rush. But there's a whole industry that does just that. In her novel, A Good Case, Cynthia Hammer writes about Sheila Price, who works for agencies that send her out as a caregiver for the elderly. It tells the story of two co-workers who become friends as they deal with the trials of low pay and uncertain working conditions. In the Dickensian tradition, Hammer highlights through fiction a major problem confronting today's society, and we have her in the studio this morning. Welcome to the program.
Thank you. Hi. Thank you for having me, Don.
So, well, first of all, you took care of the elderly. Tell me a little bit about that, because obviously that's the inspiration.
Okay, so years ago, I was a caregiver, and I still consider myself a caregiver, because at any time, if a senior or anyone that would need help, I would be more than willing to help them. I don't think you ever lose the sight of being a person. And so this is crazy. So I have to say there's some things going on that I cannot disclose at this time, my resources of writing all the characters. You know, I have a huge project underway that I really can't discuss exactly how I got the idea, but it's based on 99.9% true.
Okay.
Yes. So that's what I can say about that.
And why did you decide to use fiction in order to explore this issue?
Well, because I find that, you know, in the world we're living today, in the world that we live in today, people are so super sensitive. You don't know what you can say, what you can't say. You know, a lot of the times when I say something that's true, we used to deal in good and bad, and now it's better or worse. So you really can't say the truth without being challenged. Truth is truth. Truth used to just fall, and it's truth. So now, I said, you know what, I'll just write it as nonfiction, so there's no one says, oh, this was me, that's me. I don't know, because I knew the book would be very popular because no one's ever been able to write about caregiving. I believe it was a gift that God gave me, the ability to write this story, and it was for me to write it.
So, before we get into the characters,
Mm-hmm.
the kind of thing that you describe, a matter of fact, I think I heard you describe it almost as a slave trade in terms of the workers that have to go forth and do these things, or really a passion, I guess, for it.
Yeah.
What do you mean by that?
Well, you know, I have friends in the industry, and so you have the right to work for whomever you want to. You have the right to, say, for instance, if you work for Pepsi, I don't know if we can mention that on air, and you decide to start a lemonade stand. Do you owe Pepsi any money because you're selling beverages? So, and that's just something I just thrown out there. Mm-hmm. Okay, so if you work as a caregiver and the client really, really likes you and they want you for their personal caregiver, you have to pay between $5,000 to $10,000 to buy that client, to purchase another human being. So I call it a slave trade. And there's a lot more that goes into that, but it's Los Angeles. They can do what they want. They pretty much do what they want, and it's wrong. And we have let legislation, and I don't want to get down that rabbit hole, but we've let a lot of things just go by until we meet it head on, and then we try to address it, and it's way too late. No one should ever set up a system where, and I understand you get some great caregivers in your company and you want to keep your company strong, then provide them something that keeps them with you. But a client and a caregiver has the right to move on. And a lot of times, caregiving used to be that the agency was only there to find the client a caregiver and send them on. They would receive their, like a deposit. They would receive a certain amount of money and search for the caregiver. That's how it originally started. But there's too much money. exchanging hands, because the caregiver starts to make all the money, and the agency says, oh, no, 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 no. If I can keep you, slave, if I can keep you, I can take 70% of your pay and give you the rest.
So let's turn to the book and Sheila Price. Tell me then a little bit about her. Is that you? I don't know if that's you or not, but maybe a little. I don't know.
I like calling the client, it's a smart aleck African-American woman who has a lot of experience. I love all races. I just wanted to write it where, you go into people's homes and people treat you badly and you're not allowed to say anything. There's no such thing as disrespecting anyone. Period. Everyone should be kind. So Sheila Price has a price. That's why I called her Sheila Price. I like to write where the reader can continue to read the book and something evolves. So putting a price, I name her last name is Price because she, you know what I'm saying. Because as the story unfolds, you understand what the dollar value is for a human being, and so it takes away what the true meaning of caregiver is. And I answered in a good case. So. Her character she is a natural born caregiver, which a lot of people aren't. And however, she also is not afraid to take time out to engage with the client so she can be a vessel for that. When you have a 90 or 80-year-old person who hasn't had a lot of experience with African Americans on purpose or not on purpose, to intercede in that gap, because we all are never too old to learn and to understand each other and to love each other. And when you have someone caring for you, eventually that heart softens and you'll see a person in a different light, especially when you need them. But she never uses the position of being needed as a means to harm. And a lot of people need to hear that and read that, because we have all kinds of people in the industry.
Oh, that's true, and we'll get to them in a moment.
Okay.
But she's also very religious, and there's a passage here that you write. It says, "For many years now, God spoke softly to Sheila about the people who passed away in her care in her everyday life. She had a strong relationship with the Lord, receiving God as using her to comfort people before they passed over to the other side." How important is religion and her passion to do this kind of work?
So I do believe that religion plays a huge part, but it's not that. One thing we have to be clear, and they make it very clear in the business, that if you, no matter how religious, you don't want to be spooky kooky. Like, you don't want to be this religious nut, that the lady, needs to call 911. She's having a heart attack, and you're going to pray. You call 911. But if a person doesn't know God and they're leaving the world, sometimes they'll ask you, can I talk to you about that God of yours? It's an opportunity. You don't knock them over the head. But when I was caregiving years ago, I would take time to meditate and pray. And sometimes the client may see you praying and they may not know God. And they'll leave you alone. But then when you have a serious conversation about life and their life, and they ask you about your life, the Lord does come in. And so they're getting to know you. And I never back away from the opportunity, but it's not like I go around all day singing gospel,
right,
or putting it on when they like the AM news that we put on the gospel. You're not supposed to infringe on who they are as people. It's their home. But for me, I do believe, because of my experience with God, that years ago I would see homes before I actually arrived in them. So I would pray to God. Now, that's something personal, so I don't like to get too deep, but since you asked.
Right, go ahead.
It is that I believe that God placed me there for a reason. And so I always try to follow his lead, because I don't know. So I just try to do the right thing and hope that I did the right thing. And with that said, why would you see something that hasn't happened and you get there and it's, oh my God, it's this person. I've seen this years ago in a dream. And so when you pray to God, the opportunity opens. Sometimes I've missed it, but a lot of times I was able to pray over a lot of people, and then you could see the peace that comes to them. And there's many people who had God as well and would say, get me my cross or get me my Bible, and we'd read at night. It just depends.
And talking about, before we get to her friend, there is a character, Carmen, who seems to represent the worst of the of caregivers. I mean, she drinks a lot and she takes things. I mean, did you see that when you were out there? And how would you describe her? I mean, she seems very just like floating through life there and picking up whatever she wants.
Well, years ago when I was a kid, I was about 19 years old, and I had this huge cleaning service in Maryland. My mother was a housekeeper. I think I told that years, in a different interview. Anyway, so when I hired people, if it was a 3 or 4 story home, and you found the lady's, diamond bracelet in the basement, you didn't find it because it's not yours because you found it downstairs. It should have been upstairs in her jewelry box, but it's not yours. And so you'd be surprised how many people don't know if you find somebody's $1 or $5 under the bed, you didn't find it. It's theirs. It's in their house. You'd be surprised who have that, people who have that perception. So Carmen is the caregiver who thinks that when they arrive at your house that it's hers. And she moves about as if it's hers, and it's very disrespectful. So, and there's many caregivers that are like that. Because the person is you're a stranger in their home, and they're a little afraid and they're a little reluctant because it's all new to them. Some of them are used to it, but some don't have that voice. And some, a lot of seniors are very, very polite, and they're not going to challenge you. They want to get well. They're using all their strength for that. So a lot of times they're in a position they're vulnerable. And so the caregiver has to be an upright, respectable human being first. You don't even have to be a good caregiver. You do, but to be a good caregiver, you have to be an upright, respectable human being. Let's start with that. Not many.
Not a lot. Oh. Well, that's really uplifting. No.
Well, there's a lot of us here. There's a lot of people that are great.
Yeah.
But they have cases. You're going to always have a senior that's going to have that mediocre because it's a huge industry. People are growing older and living longer.
Yeah. Now, her friend, Gladys, I think you indicate she's from Trinidad, I guess it is.
She is from, is it Haiti or, I think Trinidad. And she is the no-holds-barred caregiver. She's perfection. But what I realized, she's used to working for perfection. When you work in Beverly Hills and, anywhere, but Beverly Hills and other areas like the Hollywood Hills where the money just flows downhill. Well, not really. It flows into their pool. It doesn't flow downhill to the what do you call it? The migrants or whatever.
Right.
So they like things. They expect a caregiver to cut their strawberries into a flower. They really want, everything has to be perfect. And they expect it to be. And the agency, and you have to be trained to set a table. A lot of people don't really know how to do that. Not to the way that it's, if you're serving a 4-course or an 8-course meal. So they expect that. And what they do, they try to hire or train someone who can provide that, because the money they make, $300 to $400 a day in a household with one caregiver is what the agency makes. So, with that said, Gladys is the caregiver who they use to train the caregivers that without paying this person, and so and she's good, and she takes it seriously, and she's every client's she's every client's dream. It's what every client would want. She's really, really good. There's those caregivers who come a dime a dozen, and I pinned her to be that because they do exist, but they're always working because they are never without a case.
And along those lines, by the way, in terms of the kinds of things that they have to, I mean, you describe it, all kinds of things, whether it's obviously issues of incontinence, but also blood and that kind of thing. I mean, there's a whole range of things that would seem to be requiring some kind of expertise. I mean, that you're paying for. Well,
okay, so if you're white, you usually are CNN or a nurse to do the incontinent. A lot of times, the African American or the Hispanic woman will do it without certification because that is part of being a caregiver. But in order for some people to touch it, they think it requires more pay. So they'll go through the whole gamut of being a certified, which is fine. And then they'll try to move away from it because it's a dirty job, but it's part of the job. It's part of the heart. It's part of caring. We all, hopefully we won't all, but we'll pass through that, and you have to do a level of dignity. It takes dignity to help another human being to clean themselves up. There's no shame in it. It's not for everyone, but it's a form of love for mankind. So there's totally nothing wrong with it, but some people want the income, but they don't want to do all that is required. You could have a case where the person may not be able to get up out of their wheelchair, so you can't turn it down. People do. So you really shouldn't be in the business, because if you don't have the stomach for really caring for a senior, you shouldn't be in the business. That's my personal opinion. And so you do a lot. I ran into a caregiver on the way here. Two of them, in fact. Can you believe that? And they were awesome. And I could tell they were awesome. They have a sense of caring about them. You can feel it. They exude care. It's in their spirit. And one of the ladies recognized me, and she asked me if I had a book and so forth. And she says, "What about these young girls?" She was like, "Talk about this today. What about the young girls who show up and they'll move a napkin around, and part of caregiving is actually cleaning the client's home?" Well, it has to be offered in the service, but a senior does need a sterile environment. And a lot of people don't know how to clean and never clean, and they feel they don't need to do that. But that should be discussed with the agency, if what you're willing not to do. It shouldn't be taken out on the senior. Don't send someone there that won't keep the environment sterile, because the caregiver, a lot of times the agency represents that will be done for them. And the caregiver arrives and realizes she's got like 3 bathrooms and you have to clean it. Well, you really don't have to. You should hire a maid service, but agencies do offer that service with a separate type of caregiving assisting. They call it, they've chopped it up in so many different job descriptions. Yes. So but what it's really about, it's about just making sure the senior has everything they need. No questions asked. But it's very difficult when you have a difficult one.
Well, as a matter of fact, so in the book, the people who are being cared for, they tend not to be so nice. I mean, there are a couple of instances where it's really bad. Tell me a little bit about that. I mean, on the one hand, we've been talking about the caregiver being all the things that they need to be, but then you get some of the people, particularly describe characters in the book, and it's like, whoa, maybe I don't want to be here.
Yes. Well, I thought it was interesting because I have so many friends in the business who have great cases. And some through the years, I've had the worst. And I've had some good ones, but I've had the worst. And, I've even worked, I'm going to say it on air, a crack house. Can I say that?
Okay, sure.
Okay. So the lady loved me, and I wish I could have stayed. But she had her grandson staying with her. It was a huge old house. And I woke up in the middle of the night, and he was just rummaging through the house. And he was in and out, in and out. The thing about it is, a lot of times they know that the circumstances are grave in the house, but the senior needs to care badly. They don't tell you. They just want you there. And the agency just wants to get the check. Because the check is great. The check is a good amount. A lot of times it could be through their insurance. There's so many components. It's really pulling a lever down on seniors' income, everything that they've worked for. Agencies have set it up just to pull it down and take it. That's a whole nother story, but I tried to implement that because I'm writing I have another book coming out. Okay. Yes. So that is the worst of the worst. The client was great. She knew that I knew, but the house was horrific. There was needles everywhere. There was blood everywhere. It was literally not in a good condition for her to be there. And so I pulled the son aside because that's, this is my personality that you see in there. I pulled him aside. I had a long conversation about, this is your mother. She didn't need to come here, but he didn't want her at her house because of their issues. So you have all that, and the caregiver's caught in between. And some people can just show up and do the job. I said, you know what? I'll stay until you guys figure this out, but I cannot. I slept in my car. Yeah, it's 24-hour. I stayed in my car. That's how bad it was. And so, and then also you have to look at the migrant worker that comes to work as a caregiver. I'm going to go there, who will sleep on the floor, who will sleep with no mattress. We have agencies that actually do that. Maybe not here in Maryland, because Maryland I think is top notch. The South is top notch. Los Angeles is a huge issue. There's just so many people, and you can only keep track of so much. So I'm not saying that was my experience. Anyone on the East Coast, because I love the East Coast. This is LA. I'll just be straight with you. Yeah. It's LA. So the difficulty comes also when you're dealing with wealth. You have the lady that ding-a-ling-ling-ling-ling-ling, rings the bell, you go lay down, ling-ling-ling-ling-ling, and it's something, could you change my channel? Ling-ling-ling-ling-ling-ling. I don't want to watch this. Ling-ling-ling-ling, could you bring me some peaches? Ling-ling-ling, give you some cinnamon on my... Literally, it's all, and it's, you almost want to laugh, but you're like, God, this is not my life, is it? It can't be. But it's funny, because they're serious. They think you're there to wait on them hand and foot. And it's one thing, I don't mind you being spoiled, and some of these houses are beautiful, so who wouldn't want to stay? But the client is just out of touch with, because the difference between their wealth and the caregiver.
For sure, it's dramatic.
Is so out of touch that they really don't get that that's a person, and they don't care. They don't care. They don't care. And they do have their favorites, and the favorites, will drive the Cadillac, and they'll take them to get their nails done, and then the rest of you are servants. And it's okay. It's all okay. The agencies don't try to fix it. This is a client that brings in steady income to their new business, or 5 clients to a small business is a lucrative business. And there's thousands of agencies in Los Angeles. I mean, thousands. So the problem is really, the problem comes down to what you're willing to do. If you're not willing to work for $10 an hour, work for 15. There's cases they'll pay you. If you're not willing to work for 15, there's cases that'll pay you 25 and 30. You don't have to work for an agency. You can work as private care, which means the client will hire you through a great reference, and you make the money that the agency makes. So it really comes down, the argument is that it's a personal choice. You stay and answer the bell, or you find better, just like anything in life.
You, by the way, you have a chapter, I think, or a portion of the book called "Venting is the New Black," and clearly this is going on between the two main characters. Tell me a little bit about that, because obviously you are sharing these experiences, as indeed probably everybody does when they have a common job or common experiences, right? But tell me a little bit about that, and how did you come with the chapter heading?
I like I said, one of my favorite writers is Shakespeare. I don't know if people would compare my work to Shakespeare, but what I learned in when I was writing and growing up and loving to read, I love a book that gives you more than what you're getting, and then you read it again like, oh, and you caught it because you're an avid reader. But the next time somebody will probably catch it, but you caught it. And the new black,
right?
Okay, she's new in California. She's the new black. That's what I meant. And she's venting. So it's just that simple. Venting is the new black. But then also the narrative of the terminology, venting, the new, anything that's new, the new black, the new pink, the new red. So, venting was, okay, so what I found out by interviewing caregivers through the years is that they all had a story. And they never said it. It's like we have so much in common, but no one will say it. And it's as if they thought they couldn't. But no. No, when I meet women or anyone, I like to hear when I say, well, what's going on? You have this look on your face. Talk to me. And then they just and it's more than what I thought, because it's like an hour goes by. But I found out that there's something that they are torn with, which is caring for someone else and being taken advantage of their heart. It's a double-edged sword when you're doing the right thing and the right thing doesn't feel right, because there's someone in the background taking advantage of it. Because caregivers really are people who really just care about people. That's it. They're not suckers. They're not someone who has been bamboozled or manipulated. They really just care about people. But people, like anything in life, people will market on that's what they consider a weakness. Being kind is not a weakness unless someone sees it as one. And you really can't say anything if you've worked for a specific job for years and that's all you know, unless you want to get certified and elevate yourself. You're really stuck in a position of not saying anything. Because if you say anything to an agency about anything, you are fired. They will never tell you why you were fired. You already know why, but they will let you go. And then you get on that vicious cycle like Sheila Price because she couldn't keep her mouth shut.
Venting out loud.
Right. Right. Yes. So, and venting was good for the relationship. It bonded them, and it was good for their psyche.
The other thing you talk about, there's at least one character I saw that died in the care of the caregiver. Tell me a little bit about particularly that scene, but did you have that experience yourself, or other people did?
Well, I've seen many people pass, many, through the years at a young age. I've never been afraid of I guess you could say a dead body is more scary to me in a scary movie than it is in person. It's a little eerie, though, the first few times, because you're in the house by yourself. It's a little eerie, and you kind of say, are they really dead? And, but the first thing I do, I always say, thank God for allowing me to be here with them. And I would say a prayer. I go to a place of not fear. I go to a place of thank you, Lord, for thinking enough of me to allow this person to pass in my presence. Not making it about me, just getting to the reality that this is a person who has lived a great life and now they're no longer here. And then what comes afterwards is very heavy because the family, but a lot of times the family is glad. They're overjoyed that the loved ones did not go alone, that someone was there, because there's a lot of guilt that they weren't. But a caregiver, as I say, is an extension of help. The family is too close to the flame. They cannot always be there. They have kids in college, they have homes, they have a life. Not that they don't love their parents, but, the fact that they were responsible to find a great agency, a great one, or a great caregiver themselves, and place them as an extension, removes the guilt, and it should. Because they did what they were supposed to do. And a lot of times the parents don't want the kid. They want someone. They want to remain independent. They don't want their kids burdened for whatever reason they discussed. It's okay. But what I found out is when a person passes, the family members left are overjoyed that their parents were not alone. They are overjoyed. And they're also relieved that it's over. I hate to say it like that, but it can be very stressful if you see someone suffering. But if someone just going naturally, then they knew it was coming also. So it's bittersweet. So I have experienced people dying on my watch.
Right.
And it's coming, but you always hope it's on the relief of the other caregiver. Because you're like, there's a procedure that has to be followed, and you don't want to ever be blamed, and nobody does, but there's a procedure that you have to follow. You have to be very careful because, a person's leaving the world. The ambulance, the 911 is called, the police are, come out. It has to be investigated. It has to, somebody has to sign off on everything. So you just want to make sure that you did everything that you possibly could. And it takes experience for that. You can't panic. You're responsible. It's kind of like you suit up.
Right. We've been talking with Cynthia Hammer. She's author of a novel, A Good Case, about caregiving. You indicate, I guess, there might be something down the road, but we'll get to that in another time.
Okay.
I appreciate you stopping by and chatting with us this morning.
Thank you so much for having me.
This has been Delmarva Today. I'm Don Rush. Thanks for listening.
Thank you for watching Delmarva Today, a production of Delmarva Public Radio. Production and audio engineering by Chris Rank. Hosted by Don Rush. For podcasts, visit delmarvapublicradio.net or subscribe to the Delmarva Today podcast on iTunes. You can also watch Delmarva Today on PAC 14 by tuning into Comcast Channel 14 or youtube.com/PAC 14.